Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of my videos. Today I've got another game for you that I played in the League of Nations games. This was a 30 minutes plus 30-second game, so let's go straight into it. So I started the game with c4. Just so you're aware, my opponent was slightly lower rated than me, so I thought if I play very subtly, play with English, maybe I can get a nice easy win. c6 was played. I've actually never seen this way of handling the English before, but essentially it allows him to transpose into a Slav defense, as we'll see here. Play knight to c3 first, d5 and d4. We are into a Slav defense now. Knight came to f6. I played my knight to f3, trying to remain flexible in the position. And he captures here, and already he has got a threat here. Essentially, with this pawn being on c6, he is now threatening just to play b5 and beat up a clear pawn, so I've got to be very, very careful. In the game I played e3, which is a playable variation, but probably not the most popular way of playing this position, as it does mean now that black gets up a pawn, and it actually is quite difficult to get back the pawn easily, although what you'll find is that black will tend to push forward with this b4 idea and then slowly but surely lose the pawn, but actually create a lot of havoc on the queen side in the process. Been played actually about 500 times. It's certainly not the most popular variation for white, as black does score quite well in these positions, but there are some really famous games from this position, including a game between Jan Timman and Garry Kasparov in 1998, so quite an interesting position. Here I play queen to c2, which probably is not the most accurate way of playing it. In actual fact, a4 is the best move. But the problem with this, and why I didn't really like it, is after b4 I've got a bit of an awkward way of where to put this knight. You might be wondering, is it any good going to e2? The problem now is I've got to spend another move trying to reroute this knight to get out of the way, and well, essentially black can try to hold on to his pawns for dear life. So moves like e6 control this pawn. If I move knight to g3, maybe bishop to a6, both his pawns look adequately defended. I think he is doing fine in this position, and the engine seems to really like his position as well, giving it minus 0.8 here, which just means that he's held onto the pawn adequately. So going back, instead knight to b1, knight to a2, they're the two most popular variations. They've both been played about the same amount of time, the same frequency, and an interesting variation called the Alekhine variation. So something I might have a look at maybe at some point if I ever play this variation again. So instead of this, what happens, I put my queen to c2. I was thinking about maybe ideas of moving my bishop to e4. If this pin ever occurred with bishop to f5, I've actually got a nice trick with the knight capturing on f6 with check, and then follow it up by capturing his bishop, so you can't really do that. So bishop to g4 was played. I don't really like this move all that much. There's not really a whole lot point of it. If the queen was still here, then yeah, I would say that maybe this bishop move wouldn't be such a bad idea, but I'm not worried about any pins here now. So I just moved my knight to e4, hit the bishop with a tempo. His bishop came back to h5, and I've got a very nice knight here. I'm already looking at ideas of just capturing c6 at some point if he ever moves his knight here to like a square like d7, and it makes it quite difficult for black to develop properly here. So a4 was played. I thought I'll try and break down his pawn center now. b4 was played, and I moved my knight to e4, which I think is fine. I mean, I'm not worried about these bishop ideas because I can always capture them off and start exchanging things off. Once these guys come off, I've actually got some nice targets here on c4 and b4. Maybe moves like the bishop coming here or something, and I win back the pawn. I think I'm doing okay. So knight comes to d7, a really, really bad move, as now this relinquishes his defense on c4. But I first thought I'll get rid of some of the tension in this position, because I don't want to get into too many tactics, as I think I've got a small advantage to win at least a pawn or two. So I captured this knight. He captured back to not butcher his pawn structure, but now I took on c4 here, and I'm still threatening to capture on c6. He played e6 to try and defend the b4 square, so I guess creating a bit of room to defend that. I now captured here on c6. A bit of a risky move. It's probably not the most accurate move, but I think I've got some nice tricks here. I'm already threatening ideas of bishop to b5, and then I've got some potential discovered attacks with my knight. He came back to g6 to try and hit my queen as well, and I've had quite a key decision here. Do I want to go for an exchange of queens and potentially go into a sort of endgamey position? And I thought to myself, yeah, actually I think I'd be fine in this position. I'm already up one pawn, and after this capture here I'm going to create a doubled pawn here. So I've got essentially a couple weaknesses to go for here. So I obliged with the exchange. He captured back, took with the rook, and I had a really nice key move here, bishop to b5, and it's very difficult for black to continue here. Does he move his king forward to e7? If he does so, this of course blocks in his bishop, and this bishop's going to be an absolute pain to try and develop. So he has to play the move knight to d7, which is also not that good, as essentially he walks into a pin. This knight has nowhere it can go to now in the short term. So now I play my bishop to d2 to start actively hitting this pawn here. I've got some simple ideas. I'm going to go after these pawns, and I've also got a static weakness on the king side with these double pawns. Bishop came to d6. I'm not worried about this threat here, so I went to rook to c1. But very quickly, if he did capture here, I of course have this lovely tactic, bishop takes, and I can go here and win the bishop as a more direct way. There is actually an even nicer way to win with this bishop here, and you'll notice that the bishop can only come back to b8 in order to survive this position. And actually I think I'm doing fine here. I'm still maintained my pawn advantage, and I've made his bishop a lot more passive now. But another way, if he also captures with the bishop, just in case you're wondering, I can still either capture here or just play g3, which I think is a bit more direct, and then try and nab this bishop very, very soon. Okay, so going back here then, so I played my rook to c1. He castled, I castled. Probably a little bit better just going to e2. By playing this way, actually, I've kind of lost the tempo a little bit, but I think this was still fine. Knight came to f6, so because he's now castled, he can now get out of the pin. And he's now threatening to come to e4, so I thought I'd stop all those shenanigans by playing f3, and now I've got this lovely broad centre here. This is really nice. I'm looking at just pushing e4, of controlling every square in the centre, and of course controlling the game as a result. But I was thinking in my head, I've got there's some ideas that I'm thinking of trying to get into an endgame, and I thought to myself, okay, if I can exchange off these two sets of rooks, how does my position look? Because I've already got one weakness here. I've got these pawns that are potentially quite weak, and I can pick these off. And I would actually say I've still got better minor pieces than my opponent here. The problem I've got to think of is if this bishop ever exchanged with this knight, I've got to be careful, as now these will be opposite coloured bishops. In some endgames, this is just theoretically a draw, and can be quite difficult to win for the winning side. In my case, me. So I was thinking about this, and going, okay, maybe I can go for this, but I need to just be a little bit careful of that. But I felt quite comfortable to go for this as long as I maintain my other advantages in the position. We say in endgames, if there are more than two weaknesses in the position, i.e. in this case I'm up one pawn and I've also got these double pawns, you should have a win. So let's see how we manage to do it. So he played his rook to c8 first. I first played e4, so I'm now threatening to come to e5, which would fork the bishop and the knight. He moved his bishop back to e7, and I just started swapping these pieces off. I thought, why not? Let's just swap everything off. it looks a bit awkward, this bishop here, but I'm going to spring it into action very soon. It can come after one of these pawns, and if I can get rid of one of these pawns, I can then push these passed pawns along. King to f8, bishop came to f4. I'm now threatening to come to b8. His knight came to e8, and I've got to be very careful. If he gets his knight here and I start exchanging things off, I could end up with opposite colour bishops, which I don't want. So instead, I played my knight and my bishop to b8 to start hitting this pawn. He played a5 to get out of that attack, and now I've got a nice simple deflection tactic. I captured here on e8. He captured back. Bishop to c7. I'm now hitting this pawn on a5, and this is impossible to defend. He has no way of defending it, so he has to play the move king to d7. Oh, you could actually, I say that you could actually play this move, but after this, this is, in my opinion, a winning king and pawn endgame now. I've still got one passer here. My king can slowly come round here, and I should be able to win this. Although it will take a bit of time, but this is still fine position for me. So going back, he played king to d7. I captured here. I'm up 2 pawns now. He played his king to c6, but I'm not worried about it ever trying to take this bishop or this pawn, as these two pieces control these really nice squares. It creates a little barrier, so this king would have to come round very slowly to try and attack, which I'm not too worried about. Okay, so king came to f2, f5. I'm not worried about this capture. Again, if he does this, this will create some more pawn weaknesses for me to come after. You would then have a couple of isolated double pawns, another isolated pawn, and of course this isolated pawn on b4. So certainly not something he wants to do. King came to e3. Bishop came to d6. I've got to be a little bit careful as it's now hitting this pawn on h2. And key little tip here: if you're playing bishop endgames, try and play your pawns on opposite colours to their bishop. So I played h3, and now I've got all these pawns here on different colours to the bishop here. Although these two bishop pawns are still targets for the bishop. He played b3, which I guess got it out of the potential attacks, but now this pawn is a goner. So I now started shifting my king across. He played e5. I don't want to take here as it allows the bishop to come here. Although this is still very much playable. I'd move my bishop back here, and this is fine. I'm looking to exchange off, and I'm still probably winning. But instead I just played d5, and what I really liked about this move is after king to c5, this king has nowhere it can go to. It is essentially trapped in a prison of my pieces. And well, after king to c3, I've already got a very nice threat now. I've just played my bishop to b4. If he just plays a move like this, I would just win his king outright. Win his bishop outright, which is really nice. In the actual game, though, I don't think he noticed it. The best move would be bishop to b8, which is just terrible. His bishop just becomes more and more passive. But in the actual game, he played bishop back to e7, and of course after this, I just won the bishop off with this move. And my opponent resigned. So a really nice game. I thought I played quite well there. I felt as though a bit more sort of confident in my play, because I've as I say, I've been sort of had a little bit of a sort of downturn in my play recently in some of the games that I've been showing you guys. But it was good to get this nice win on the board, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, take care. Bye bye.